Today we are going to learn how to use um, a very special instrument. I think most of you probably have never used it before. This is made by a company called Veneer, and they have a handheld device. It's called Lab2. So the first thing you need to do is use the power button to turn it on. Now it's being turned on, as you can see, and it shows the screen. And also right here you can see there are 4 USB ports, and that's where the sensors can be plugged in, and it could receive signals and record the data. Sometimes you may be necessary to plug the power, so that's the power input. And finally, there are times when you connect this device to a computer. In that case, we use this port right here. Today we are going to do a lab testing the pH values of various test materials. So when we use the pH sensors, this is what they look like, pH sensors. We are going to use two simultaneously so that we could collect data quickly. The first thing to do is to plug that into those ports I just mentioned. It doesn't really matter, but if you care about that, you could remember one is plugged into channel 1, and the second one is plugged into channel 2. And notice that each one comes with a protective sleeve, and each sort of sleeve contains fluid. Do not take them out yet until you are ready. The probe, that's the sensor, need to be always immersed in fluid to prevent the tip from drying it out. So right now I'm going to keep it in there. And I'm going to show you that that's the pH value I'm recording from channel 1 and channel 2. So after that, I'm going to go ahead and set up the rest of the experiment. I have 200 ml beakers. One I label A, the other one I label B. And for the first experiment, I'm going to fill both with distilled water. And I'm going to fill all the way up to this line, which is 80 ml. Now, distilled water or deionized water, you could get that deionized water in your lab, but you have to use the faucet with a white tab. The white tab has a label saying it's DI, means deionized. So that's the first one. And that's the second one. Okay. And you also notice we have two small flasks. And one is labeled, and you have to do the label yourself. One is labeled HCl, and the other you should label NaOH. You don't need a lot of those, you just need a small amount. And finally, you have a large beaker. It was a good idea to fill probably 3/4 full of this beaker with distilled water. So we are going to do that. After I have filled the big beaker with distilled water, I am ready to take those probes out of the protective sleeve, because the probe need to be always in contact with the fluid. So I won't do this until I'm ready for the big beaker, which I'm going to call it a rinsing station, because that's what its function is. It's going to keep the probe clean. So now let me move that a little bit. At this point, we are almost ready for the experiment. Two more things I forgot to mention, because we are going to handle HCl, hydrochloric acid, and the sodium hydroxide, NaOH. Both are pretty strong acid and base. So for this particular experiment, it is strongly recommended that students bring their own gloves to lab. I'm only doing a demo right now, and these are not the real acid and base I'm using. So I'm not wearing gloves. But when we are doing the lab, please keep in mind to bring your own gloves. Another thing is that it's also a good idea to wear goggles in the lab. The Malcolm X lab does provide goggles. So if you feel that if you're not wearing glasses, probably it's a good idea for you to wear goggles. Lab coat is optional. Again, we do not provide that. If you feel that you need actual protection, you are welcome to bring your own lab coat. Okay, so as I said, I don't have the material with me right now. So however, I'm going to go ahead to demonstrate the rest of the experiment. So let's review our setup. We have 2 beakers that contain distilled water for now, although we call these 2 beakers are test materials. We're going to use water first as the baseline, but after we finish the first one, we are going to replace water with other solutions. The big beakers, we call it a rinsing station. And then finally, we have 2 small flasks contain strong acid hydrochloric acid and a strong base sodium hydroxide. And hydrochloric acid will only work with beaker A, and NaOH would only work with the beaker B. So now we could move them over to the beaker, move the probe to the beaker. And you should, because both still are simply just distilled water, so you should read something very close to 7. That's the pH 7. Just a word of caution, even though in ideal situation you should read something very close to 7, but the pH probes are very difficult to calibrate, and they have a low memory. So sometimes you may not see that value right away. You could try to go back to the rinsing station, try to clean it off, but you will never get perfect 7. That's what I'm saying. As you could see, these 2 is 7.2 and 6.9. It's the relative value that's important. The absolute values are not as important. I just want to remind you, just so don't freak out. However, if the values are really very different, really deviate from what you expect, for example, instead of 7 you get 3 or 4, then you should let your instructor know, maybe, because that means the probe could be defective. So now we are ready to do our experiment according to the manual. We are going to first do 5 drops of HCl into a beaker. So we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we should stir it and make sure that the fluid is evenly distributed. And then we do the same thing with NaOH to beaker B. So we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same thing. And so this is the first test, the first data, and you should read a pH value, and you should record this in your data sheet. After that, you will go back and add another 5 drops of hydrochloric acid to beaker A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of sodium hydroxide in beaker B. So now each A and B each has either 10 drop total of HCl or 10 drop total of NaOH. And then you will record the data again, and you will continue to do this every time you add another 5 additional drop of either hydrochloric acid or sodium hydroxide until that each beaker has had 30 drops of either HCl or sodium hydroxide. When you finish 30 drops, you should put these 2 probes back to the rinsing station, and you need to take these 2 beaker A and B and replace the water. You don't need the water anymore, so you're going to rinse it. Instead, you are going to pick another test material, for example, vitamin C solution or soda, and you are going to do the same thing. But the second trial, instead of water, you are going to fill each beaker with a test material. And then you will repeat the whole process again. Put a probe back, and each time you add hydrochloric acid 5 drops to beaker A, or sodium hydroxide to beaker B, until you have reached 30 drops total.